video and one that gets seriously deep into the science of bodybuilding.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting. Lots to unpack.
Sometimes I feel like there's so much info out there about getting ripped, but it's hard to tell what really works. So our mission today is find the science, the stuff that actually gets results, and maybe even uncover some stuff we didn't expect.
Definitely. That's what I love about these deep dives, really getting into the nitty-gritty.
All right, so one thing that's always kind of bugged me, this anabolic window thing.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Gotta chug that protein shake right after your workout or all your gains just disappear? What's the real deal?
You can relax.
Okay, good.
That 30-minute window is pretty much a myth. You have way more time to fuel those muscles after you're done lifting.
So no more sprinting to the blender as soon as I rack the weights.
Not at all. All of our sources say you've got something like 4 to 6 hours around your workout. Plenty of time to get that protein in.
That's a relief.
But speaking of protein,
Oh, yeah, that's the big one, right?
it really is the foundation of building muscle. Though I have to say, all the conflicting advice on how much to eat, kind of a headache.
I know, right? 1 gram per pound of body weight, more, less. It's like a protein puzzle.
Well, the research actually gives us some pretty clear ranges depending on what you're going for. So if bulking up is your goal, studies say aim for between 1.6 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight.
Kilograms, okay. Got to do the math there.
Or that's about 0.7 to 1 gram per pound.
Oh, okay, so that classic 1 gram per pound advice is actually spot on then.
Yeah, falls right in the middle of that range.
Cool, that makes sense. But hold on, I've also heard there's a limit to how much protein your body can actually use per meal, like 20 to 25 grams max. Is there any truth to that?
That's a common belief for sure. But some of the newer research, it's really challenging that limit. Yeah, we might be able to use way more protein per meal than we thought.
How much more are we talking about here?
Or that bodybuilding video we mentioned, it actually talks about studies where people had meals with 40 grams of protein, even 70 grams, and saw benefits.
70 grams? That's a lot of protein in one sitting.
It is. So yeah, it seems like that upper limit might be much higher than we used to think.
So does that mean we should just be trying to stuff as much protein as possible into every meal?
Not necessarily. While researchers are still figuring out the ideal amount per meal, the key thing is your total daily protein intake. That's what really matters.
Got it. So it's like a protein budget for the day.
Exactly. And it's less about how you divide up that budget across your meals and more about hitting that total target.
Okay, so daily total is king. Got it. But what about protein quality? I know there's all this talk about complete proteins, incomplete proteins. It gets a little confusing. What should we be focusing on?
It's simpler than it might seem. The key player here is leucine. It's an amino acid, and it basically acts as a trigger for your muscles to start building protein, like flipping a switch to tell your muscles, hey, time to grow.
I like that analogy. So where do we find this leucine?
Whey protein's a great source, but you can find it in other animal-based protein too, like chicken.
Makes sense. And I remember that bodybuilding video had a chart showing how much of different foods you'd need to eat to get the same leucine as a scoop of whey.
Yeah, it's pretty eye-opening. You'd need a mountain of chicken breast to match that scoop of powder.
It definitely puts things into perspective. So basically, as long as we're getting enough total protein, we're probably good on the leucine front.
Yeah, and as long as you're eating a variety of protein sources, you'll be getting enough of those other essential amino acids too. No need to stress about every single meal.
That takes the pressure off.
Yeah.
So no more obsessing over whether this meal has exactly 20 grams of protein or that one has 40. Just focus on the big picture.
Exactly. Now, let's shift gears a bit and talk about what's actually happening inside our muscles when we hit the weights. You've probably heard the term muscle hypertrophy thrown around.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I nod along like I know what it means, but sometimes I'm thinking, someone please explain that in plain English.
I hear you. Well, muscle hypertrophy is just a fancy way of saying muscle growth. And it all boils down to this. For your muscles to get bigger, the rate of protein synthesis, that's the building of new muscle protein, has to be higher than the rate of protein breakdown.
Okay, that makes sense. So how do we tip the scales towards building?
That's where strength training comes in. When you lift weights, you're actually causing tiny tears in your muscle fibers. Your body then repairs those tears, making those muscle fibers bigger and stronger.
So it's like our muscles are saying, hey, we need to be tougher to handle this.
Exactly. They adapt and grow. And to keep those muscles growing, you need to keep challenging them. That's where progressive overload comes into play.
I've heard about that. It's about gradually increasing the weight or resistance as you get stronger.
Got it. That fitness advice video we have, they actually recommend finding your 1 rep max, or 1 RM. That's the heaviest weight you can lift once, with good form, of course.
So it's like a benchmark to see if your workouts are actually tough enough to make those muscles grow.
Exactly. If you can easily pump out 10 reps with a certain weight, it's probably time to level up.
Makes sense. And that medical article, they mentioned training frequency too, working each muscle group at least twice a week.
Consistency is key. Got to keep those muscles stimulated, but not overdoing it. And here's a tip. Compound exercises like squats or deadlifts, they work multiple muscle groups at the same time, so you're getting more out of your workout.
Efficient and effective. I like it. But hold on, before we move on, can we circle back to that 70-gram protein meal? I'm still trying to wrap my head around that, especially compared to that old 20, 25-gram limit. What does that mean for someone who's really trying to optimize their gains?
It's definitely a game changer. And it raises some interesting questions, especially if you do intermittent fasting or have longer gaps between meals. Could focusing on your daily protein intake instead of timing each meal be more effective or even more freeing?
I see where you're going with this. Maybe instead of stressing about how much protein is in each meal, I should just aim for that total daily goal and trust that my body will figure it out.
That's the kind of thinking this new research encourages. And it leads us to another important part of building muscle sleep.
Sleep. The thing I never get enough of. But how does that tie into building muscle?
Well, remember those tiny tears we talked about?
Yeah.
The ones that happen when you lift weights? Sleep is when your body really goes to work repairing those tears and building you back up.
So if I'm skimping on sleep, am I basically sabotaging my gains?
It might not be that dramatic,
Yeah.
but you're definitely not giving your body what it needs to recover and rebuild those muscles properly.
Okay, you've convinced me. I'll try to get those 8 hours tonight.
Good. Now, there's another factor that often gets overlooked, but it can really impact your muscle building journey, and that's stress.
I've always wondered about the link between stress and muscle growth. It seems counterintuitive. You're stressed, you work out to relieve stress, but then stress might be holding you back.
It can definitely be a vicious cycle. When you're chronically stressed, your body pumps out cortisol, and that can actually mess with your muscle protein synthesis, even break down muscle tissue.
Wait, stress can actually lead to muscle loss?
Yeah, it's not something we often think about, but it's important. So finding healthy ways to manage stress, whether that's meditation, yoga, spending time in nature, or even just taking a few deep breaths, it can be just as important for building muscle as lifting those weights and eating your protein.
You're right. Stress management deserves more attention. I'm adding that to my to-do list right now.
Excellent. And remember, it's all about finding what works for you and making those stress-reducing activities a part of your routine. But let's get back to training for a minute. We talked about progressive overload and compound exercises, but there are so many different training methods out there. Have you ever heard of HIIT?
HIT. Oh, yeah, high-intensity interval training. Those workouts are everywhere these days. They seem super intense, all those short bursts of activity with little breaks in between. But are they really effective for building muscle?
That's a great question, and it's definitely sparked a lot of debate in the fitness world. That fitness advice video actually touched on this, and the expert argued that while HIAs is great for your heart and burning calories, it might not be the best way to maximize muscle growth.
So if my main goal is building muscle, should I stick with more traditional strength training?
That's what the expert in the video seemed to suggest. But, like with everything, there's more to the story.
Oh, okay, now I'm intrigued. What else is there to consider when it comes to HIA and muscle building?
Well, the research is still coming in on this one, but some studies suggest that adding HIA into your training program strategically might actually have some benefits.
Really? How so?
For example, doing a short HII session after your regular strength training workout could help boost your metabolism and help you burn more fat, but without messing with your muscle gains.
Interesting. So maybe it's not an either situation. You could combine HIIT and traditional strength training and get the best of both worlds.
Exactly. It's all about experimenting and finding what works for you.
I love that approach, personalized fitness.
Absolutely. Now, there's another training method I'd like to talk about that often gets overlooked: volume training.
Volume training. That sounds pretty intense. What's that all about?
It basically involves doing a lot of sets and reps with a moderate weight.
So more about quantity than intensity.
You could say that. The idea is to really fatigue the muscles, and that can trigger some serious muscle growth.
Interesting. But isn't there a risk of overtraining if you're doing so much work?
There's definitely a fine line between pushing yourself and pushing too far.
Ah.
And that's where Listening to your body and making sure you're getting enough rest is super important.
So volume training could be effective, but it needs to be done carefully, and you really need to know your limits.
Exactly. And that brings us back to one of the big themes we've been talking about, personalization.
Hmm.
Whether it's figuring out your ideal protein intake, picking the right training method, or finding ways to manage your stress, it's all about understanding what works best for you.
I'm really starting to see how all these pieces fit together. And it's empowering to know that we have the power to make choices that support our muscle building goals.
Absolutely. Now, before we wrap up this first part of our deep dive, there's one more myth I want to address, and that's the idea that you need to guzzle down a protein shake immediately after your workout, or you'll lose all your hard-earned gains.
Oh, yeah, the infamous anabolic window. We talked about that earlier, but I'm curious to hear more about why this myth is so persistent.
I think it comes from a misunderstanding of how muscle protein synthesis actually works. Yes, your muscles are ready to soak up protein after a workout, but that window of opportunity is much wider than people think.
So it's not a race against the clock?
Not at all.
Yeah.
We already talked about that 4 to 6 hour window around your workout, and that applies here too.
That's a relief. I always feel so rushed to get my protein in right away. But what about pre-sleep protein? I've heard that can be beneficial for muscle growth.
That's another interesting area of research. The idea is that if you have protein before bed, it can help keep your muscle protein synthesis going all night long. So it counteracts any muscle breakdown that might happen when you're fasting for a long time.
So it's like giving your muscles a late night snack to keep them happy and growing.
Exactly. And according to our sources, around 40 grams of protein before bed could be a good target to aim for.
Okay, I'm definitely going to try that. But before we get carried away with protein timing, there's one concern that often comes up when we talk about high protein diets.
You're probably thinking about kidney health, right?
Yep. There's that lingering worry that eating too much protein can damage your kidneys. Is there any truth to that?
The International Society of Sports Nutrition has come out and said there's no evidence of harm for healthy people, even if they're eating a lot of protein.
That's reassuring.
And the bodybuilding video actually highlighted some studies where people were eating as much as 4.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, and their kidneys were totally fine.
Wow, that's a lot of protein. But it's good to know our bodies are tougher than we sometimes think.
Exactly. Now, before we jump into part two, let's quickly recap what we've learned so far. We busted that myth about the 30-minute anabolic window. We explored the importance of total daily protein intake, and we even challenged the idea that high-protein diets are bad for your kidneys.
It's amazing how much we've covered already. I'm already feeling way more confident about my approach to building muscle. Can't wait to see what else we discover in the next part.
I'm excited too. We'll be diving deeper into the science of muscle growth, exploring different training strategies, and talking about how to create a holistic approach to fitness that takes care of both your body and your mind.
Sounds awesome. Stay tuned, everyone. We're just getting warmed up.
That's right, stay tuned. Welcome back to our deep dive on building muscle. It's been pretty eye-opening so far, wouldn't you say?
Totally. I feel like we're really busting some myths and getting down to what actually matters. And, it's interesting how we can get caught up in all these little details, grams of protein, timing, exercises, and sometimes forget about the big picture.
You know, right?
Yeah.
Like, why are we even doing this in the first place?
Exactly.
One thing that really hit home for me, especially in that medical article, was how important strength training is for the long haul. It's not just about looking good, it's about building strength and resilience that'll last a lifetime.
Right. It's an investment in our future health, not just a quick fix.
Totally. And as we get older, we naturally start losing muscle mass. It's called sarcopenia, and it can actually start as early as our 30s.
So those warnings about use it or lose it, they're not kidding.
Not at all. But the good news is we can fight back against this age-related muscle loss if we keep up with strength training.
So it's not just vanity, it's like a health necessity.
I think so. And it's not just about keeping your muscles. Strength training helps with bone density, metabolism, balance, even reduces the risk of chronic diseases like heart disease and type 2 diabetes.
Wow, the benefits just keep coming.
Right. It's like strength training is the ultimate multitasker.
I'm definitely feeling motivated to make it a regular thing now, but what does that actually look like? How often should we be strength training, and how do we know if we're pushing ourselves enough?
Most of the sources we looked at recommend at least 2 strength training sessions per week, hitting all the major muscle groups. And remember that progressive overload idea. It's all about gradually increasing the weight, reps, or sets as you get stronger.
Got it. Challenge yourself, but safely, right?
Exactly. Listen to your body, and if something hurts, stop and figure out why. Better safe than sorry.
Good advice. And I think it's important to remember that everyone's starting point is different.
For sure. What's challenging for one person might be a warm-up for someone else. There's no one-size-fits-all approach.
Absolutely. And speaking of individual differences, I remember one of the fitness experts in the videos mentioned how some women avoid lifting heavy weights because they're afraid of bulking up. Is that a real concern?
That's a common myth, actually.
Yeah.
Building a lot of muscle, the kind that makes you look bulky, it takes a lot of work and specific training, and usually dietary changes, too. It doesn't just happen overnight.
So just lifting weights a couple of times a week, I'm not going to suddenly turn into a bodybuilder.
Not unless you're specifically training for that, no.
Yeah.
And remember, building muscle has so many benefits for both men and women.
It's about feeling strong, confident, capable.
Right. It's empowering. And let's not forget that muscle burns more calories than fat, even when you're just resting.
So building muscle can actually help you manage your weight.
Absolutely. It's not just about the calories you burn during a workout. It's about boosting your metabolism, so you're burning more calories even when you're not exercising.
That's pretty awesome. Muscle,
Yeah,
the gift that keeps on giving.
I know, right? And the benefits go beyond just the physical stuff. Strength training can even improve your mental health. Better mood, less stress, higher self-esteem.
It's like a total mind-body workout.
Totally. Now let's shift gears a bit and talk about another key part of building muscle: recovery.
Recovery. That's where sleep and stress management come back into play, right?
Absolutely. Remember, sleep is crucial for your muscles to repair and grow. And too much stress can really mess things up by raising your cortisol levels.
So it's not just about hitting the gym and eating right, it's about creating a whole lifestyle that supports muscle growth.
Precisely. Prioritizing sleep, managing stress, and giving your body enough time to rest between workouts. It's all connected.
So those rest days are just as important as the workout days.
Totally. Rest is when those muscles adapt and get stronger. It's not lazy, it's essential.
I'm starting to realize that this is way more than just lifting weights. It's about taking care of your whole self.
I'm glad you're seeing that. It's about finding that sweet spot, pushing yourself, but also knowing when to back off and let your body recover.
And that reminds us that everyone's different. What works for one person might not work for another.
Absolutely. There's no one right way to build muscle. It's about experimenting, listening to your body, and finding what feels good for you.
I'm loving this conversation. It's so insightful.
Me too. And I think the biggest takeaway is that it's not about being perfect. It's about making progress, celebrating your wins, and enjoying the process.
That's such a good point. It takes the pressure off. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey.
Exactly. And this is a journey that lasts a lifetime. There will be times when you hit a plateau, times when you make amazing progress. But if you're consistent, if you stay curious, and if you keep those goals in mind, you can achieve amazing things.
All right. Are you ready for the final part of our muscle building deep dive?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Stay tuned, everyone. We're about to go even deeper into the science of muscle growth. All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We've been uncovering all the secrets of building muscle, and I'm pumped for this last part.
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting.
We've tackled protein, workouts, recovery, all the big stuff. But there's one thing I'm super curious about: supplements.
Ah, yes, supplements. The world of protein powders, pills, and promises.
Exactly. It feels like a jungle out there, so much hype. Are they really necessary or just a marketing gimmick?
Well, that fitness advice video we have, the expert was pretty clear. You can absolutely build muscle without supplements.
Okay, that's good to know.
If you're getting enough protein from food, chicken, fish, beans, lentils, all that good stuff, you're giving your body what it needs.
Makes sense. But I remember the video also said that supplements can be helpful in some cases.
Right, like if you have a hard time getting enough protein from food alone, maybe because of a busy schedule or dietary restrictions, then supplements can bridge the gap.
So they're not inherently good or bad. It's more about using them strategically.
Exactly. And keep in mind, supplement covers a lot of different things. Protein powder is one, but there's also creatine, beta-alanine, BCAAs.
Yeah, that bodybuilding video got pretty deep into creatine. It's like a natural compound that helps your muscles make energy during intense workouts, right?
That's right. And creatine's been studied a lot. It's generally considered safe and effective for boosting strength and power.
But it's not some magic pill. You still got to put in the work.
Absolutely. Supplements are just that, supplements. They can help, but they can't replace hard work and a good diet.
Right. And I think it's worth mentioning that supplements aren't regulated the same way as medications.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Do your research, Choose reputable brands and talk to your doctor before adding any supplements to your routine, especially if you have any health conditions.
Good advice. Now let's get back to basics for a second. We've talked about the science of muscle building, but can we break it down even further? What's happening inside our muscles when we lift weights at the cellular level?
Okay, so picture your muscle fibers like tiny ropes.
Tiny ropes, got it.
And when you lift weights, you're creating tiny tears in those ropes.
Ouch, I can picture that.
But your body's smart. It wants to repair those tears and make the rope stronger. So it kicks off this process called muscle protein synthesis. And this is where those amino acids from protein come in.
Ah, so the amino acids are like building blocks.
Exactly. They help to repair and rebuild those torn muscle fibers, making them bigger and stronger than before.
So it's like our bodies are constantly under construction, breaking down and rebuilding muscle.
That's a great way to put it. And the more we challenge those muscles with strength training, the more our bodies adapt and grow. But remember, this process doesn't stop when you leave the gym.
You're talking about recovery again, right? We've talked about sleep and stress, but what else affects how our muscles recover and grow?
Nutrition is huge. It's not just about protein. You need enough calories overall, carbs, and healthy fats to fuel your workouts and help your body recover.
So basically, fuel your body with good stuff.
Exactly. And don't forget about hydration. Water is crucial for everything your body does, including muscle recovery.
Right. Gotta stay hydrated.
Now, you mentioned trying pre-sleep protein earlier. I'm curious to hear how that went.
You know, I was a bit skeptical at first, but I tried it for a few weeks, a small protein shake before bed, and I actually noticed a difference, less soreness after my workouts and quicker recovery.
Interesting. That makes sense based on the research. That pre-sleep protein helps keep your muscle protein synthesis going all night long, so you're less likely to break down muscle while you're fasting.
Like a little midnight snack for your muscles.
Exactly. Now, before we wrap up our deep dive, I want to leave you with one last thought-provoking question. We've been all about the specifics of muscle-building protein, workouts, supplements, but what if the real key is actually changing your mindset?
Ooh, I like that. Tell me more.
What if, instead of obsessing over every detail, you focused on creating a healthy lifestyle that supports your overall well-being?
It's like seeing muscle building as part of a bigger picture, taking care of yourself.
Exactly. Imagine approaching fitness with joy and curiosity, not pressure and self-criticism. What if you focused on nourishing your body, moving in ways you enjoy, prioritizing sleep and stress management, and celebrating your progress?
That sounds amazing, so much more freeing. It's not about reaching some perfect ideal, it's about creating a lifestyle you can actually enjoy.
That's the key. And when you have that foundation of health and well-being, your body is in a much better place to build muscle effectively.
It's like they say, a healthy mind and a healthy body.
Exactly. And it reminds us that muscle building isn't just about how you look. It's about cultivating strength, resilience, and vitality that helps you live your best life.
That's such a powerful message. Well, I think that's the perfect way to end our deep dive. Thanks for taking us on this journey. I've learned so much.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, this is just the start of your muscle building journey. Keep exploring, keep learning, and most importantly, have fun with it.
And to everyone listening, we hope you found this deep dive helpful and inspiring. Take what you've learned and apply it to your own fitness journey. Experiment, find what works for you, and celebrate every step of the way. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.